You think you know what loyalty is? Wait until you see what a dog will do for his family. Captain Leo Mitchell, a battle-hardened SEAL, stepped onto the quiet streets of the small town, his eyes scanning the horizon. The air was thick with the weight of the past, his every step heavy with memories of wars fought and friends lost. At his side, K9 Hunter, a German shepherd, walked with an almost unnatural precision, his ears alert, his every movement filled with purpose. They weren't here for long, just passing through. But when the wind shifted and the quiet town seemed to hold its breath, Leo knew something was wrong. His daughter, Lily, stood by the small cafe, her face lit by the soft glow of the street lamp. But before Leo could even call out to her, Hunter tensed. The dog's body stiffened as if something unseen triggered his instincts. Leo watched in confusion as Hunter growled low, a warning that echoed in the silence. He had seen this before, something in the dog's behavior, a protective instinct that ran deeper than any training Leo had ever seen. The K9 wouldn't let anyone near Lily. Not even the strangers who passed by, not even the friendly townsfolk who smiled in greeting. Every time someone tried to approach, Hunter would stand between them and Lily, teeth bared, a barrier of loyalty and ferocity. Leo's heart raced as he stepped forward. "Hunter, what's going on?" he muttered, reaching out for the dog's collar. But Hunter only growled louder, his amber eyes locked onto the crowd. Something was wrong. Leo's gut twisted, a feeling of unease settling in his chest. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. Nurse Claire Thompson. She had been taking care of him after his last injury, helping him heal both physically and emotionally. There was something about her, something he couldn't put his finger on. She was always there when he needed her, always with a smile or a kind word. But now, as she walked toward them, Hunter's growl shifted, turning into a deep, resonant whine. It was as if the dog recognized her. Claire paused, her eyes meeting Leo's. "I know what's going on," she said, her voice steady but filled with an unspoken understanding, filled with a quiet urgency. "Hunter has been through things, Leo, things that connect him to a bigger picture. A mission. But why Lily?" Leo's question hung in the air, unanswered. "Because he's protecting her," Claire said softly. "Hunter's instincts are more than just training. He's protecting something or someone important." Leo swallowed hard. He didn't understand it, but he could feel the weight of Claire's words settling in his chest. His daughter, the one person he couldn't afford to lose, was now at the center of something he didn't even know existed. He turned to Lily, who was standing still, her wide eyes reflecting the uncertainty in his own. For a moment, everything around them felt frozen, as if time had stopped. Claire's voice broke the silence again. "Leo, there's something you don't know. Something from your past." Leo looked at Claire, confusion furrowing his brow. "What are you talking about?" She took a deep breath, her gaze drifting to the horizon as if searching for something. "Before you left for the service, there was a promise made. A promise to protect those you loved. Hunter was part of that promise." Leo's heart skipped a beat. He had no memory of any promise like that. He had only ever known his mission and his duty. But Claire's words hit him like a wave, stirring up memories he hadn't realized were buried so deep. "You need to trust me, Leo," Claire said gently, her eyes locking onto his. "This isn't just about Hunter. It's about something far bigger, something connected to your past and now, your daughter's future." The tension in the air seemed to intensify as the minutes stretched on. Leo could feel his world shifting beneath him, but he didn't know how to stop it. He glanced at Hunter once more, his loyal companion, standing guard like a sentinel. "What do we do now?" Leo asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging within him. Claire stepped closer, her expression resolute. "Now, we uncover the truth," she said, her voice firm. "And we protect what's ours." Leo stood at the edge of the porch, looking out into the darkening night. The wind had died down, leaving only the sound of his own breath and the occasional. Of not being alone was something he couldn't quite grasp. "Lily, she's part of this too, isn't she?" Leo asked quietly. Claire nodded. "She is, and so is Hunter. They both carry something from the past. and they both have a role to play in what's coming. Leo turned his gaze back to the dog, who was now standing, tail low but ready, as if he could sense the storm brewing, not just in the weather, but in the air around them. "So what now?" Leo asked. Claire took one last look at him before speaking, her voice steady. "Now we find the answers. We face whatever's coming. Together." Leo woke up before the sun, the early morning light filtering through the windows in soft beams. He sat up slowly, his body aching from years of service, but it was a different kind of ache now. It wasn't just the scars from his time in the field, it was the weight of what Claire had said, what he had learned about himself, about his past, and the promises that had been made. He looked over at Lily, still asleep in the room next door. He'd spent so many nights thinking of how he had failed her, but now, with Claire's words echoing in his mind, he wasn't sure what failure really meant anymore. Hunter, as always, was by his side, watching him with calm eyes. The dog's presence was a constant reminder of the bond they shared, of the trust that went beyond words. Hunter had always been more than a pet, more than just a trained canine. He was a protector, a companion, and now, it seemed, the dog was guarding something much bigger than Leo had imagined. Leo stood up and walked toward the window, his eyes scanning the horizon. The small town outside was quiet, the streets empty, the air crisp with the promise of a new day. But Leo knew, deep down, that this was just the calm before the storm. Something was coming. He could feel it in the air. The past was closing in on him, and the future was uncertain. But he couldn't run from it anymore. He had to face it, for Lily, for Claire, and for himself. He needed to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. The sound of footsteps behind him pulled him out of his thoughts. It was Claire. She walked into the room with a quiet urgency, her eyes steady as always, but there was something different about her today, something more determined. "It's time," she said simply, her voice filled with resolve. Leo didn't need to ask what she meant. He could see it in her eyes. She was ready, ready to face whatever truth lay hidden in the past, ready to uncover the secrets that had been buried for so long. "I'm ready," Leo replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He turned to Hunter, who had already stood up, his body tense, his eyes alert. The dog seemed to understand, as if he knew that the moment had arrived. It was time to move forward. They couldn't stay hidden forever. They had to confront whatever was waiting for them. Leo and Claire made their way out of the house, the first rays of sunlight breaking over the hills, casting long shadows on the ground. As they stepped into the car, the silence between them was thick with anticipation. They didn't need to speak. Both of them knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was the only road they could take. Hunter jumped into the back seat, his ears pricked, as if he, too, was listening for something. Leo glanced at Claire as she gave him a small nod. They were ready. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Leo couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. As the car pulled away from the driveway, the wind picked up again, a sharp gust that made the trees sway. It felt like the earth itself was shifting beneath them. The past had come to collect its due, and Leo wasn't sure what would be left when it was done. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like he wasn't alone in this fight. Together with Claire, with Hunter by his side, he had a chance. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was ready to find out. The journey had only just begun. The drive felt endless, the road stretching out before them as the landscape blurred into a patchwork of trees and fields. Leo's hands gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing with every turn. Claire sat silently beside him, her eyes fixed ahead, but there was a sense of determination in her posture, in the way she held herself. Hunter lay in the back seat, alert as ever, his gaze shifting from one side of the road to the other, as if he too sensed the gravity of the moment. They were heading toward an old estate, a place Leo had almost forgotten about, a place that, as Claire had said, was tied to his past, to the promises he had made. Leo had never thought much of it, this old family property, this house that had once belonged to his grandparents. But now, with Claire's revelation, with Hunter's strange connection to the past, it felt like it held the key to everything. They had arrived at the gates of the estate. The massive iron gates stood tall, weathered and rusted, but still formidable. The place had an eerie stillness to it, as if it were holding its breath. As the gates creaked open, a wave of cold air rushed out, and Leo could almost feel the weight of time pressing down on him. He had not been here in years, and yet it felt like no time had passed at all. The house loomed in the distance, its dark silhouette framed against the cloudy sky. It looked as though it had been abandoned for ages, its windows dark and empty, the once grand architecture now crumbling under the weight of neglect. Leo parked the car and turned off the engine, his heart pounding in his chest. The silence was suffocating. He could feel the ghosts of the past whispering in the wind. Claire opened the door first, stepping out with the same quiet determination she had carried with her the entire time. She turned back to look at Leo, her eyes filled with understanding. "This is it," she said softly, but there was no fear in her voice. Only resolve. Leo nodded, his throat tight. He knew that whatever they were about to uncover here would change everything. Together, they walked toward the front door, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the overgrown grass beneath them. As they approached the house, Hunter moved ahead, his body low to the ground, nose twitching, eyes scanning every corner. The dog seemed to know something they didn't. There was a strange energy in the air, something almost tangible, and Leo couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The door creaked open as they reached it, the heavy wood groaning as though it hadn't been touched in decades. Inside, the house was dark and cold, the air thick with dust. The faint smell of old wood and forgotten memories hung in the air. Leo stepped inside, his senses immediately assaulted by the stillness of the place. It was as if the house itself had been waiting for them. Hunter moved ahead, his paws making soft sounds on the floor as he sniffed the air. He stopped in front of a door at the end of the hallway, his eyes locked onto it, as though he recognized something. Leo felt a chill crawl down his spine. There was something in this room. He could feel it. Claire stepped forward, her hand resting on Leo's arm, grounding him in the moment. "We're here," she said softly. "It's time to find the truth." Leo nodded, the weight of it all settling in his chest. Whatever they found behind that door, whatever Hunter had sensed, would be the key to understanding everything that had brought them here. They weren't just uncovering the past. They were unlocking a future that had been sealed for far too long. Leo stood at the threshold of the room, his breath caught in his throat as the door creaked open. The air inside was thick with dust, the faint scent of old wood and forgotten memories clinging to every corner. Hunter, as always, moved ahead, his nose twitching, his body low to the ground, as though he was searching for something specific. Leo's eyes followed the dog, his mind racing with every step they took into the room. It felt like they were walking into the past, stepping through time itself. Claire stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, grounding him in the moment. She didn't speak, but her presence was a silent reassurance. They moved slowly, as if any sudden movement would disturb something ancient and fragile. The room was filled with old furniture covered in sheets, the remnants of a life that had long since faded. Leo's gaze shifted across the room, but his eyes were drawn to a large wooden chest in the corner. It was old, much older than anything else in the room, and it stood out against the worn furniture like a silent sentinel, guarding its secrets. Hunter stopped in front of the chest, his tail stiff as he stared at it, his body still. Leo felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This was it. This was what Hunter had been protecting. This was the key to everything. Leo took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. Claire, sensing the shift in the air, moved beside him. Together, they approached the chest. As Leo's hand rested on the old wood, he could feel the weight of the past pressing down on him, as if the chest itself was alive with the memories it contained. His fingers brushed the latch, and for a moment he hesitated. Was he ready for what he might find? Was he ready to face the truth, no matter how dark or twisted it might be? The answer came in a flash of clarity. He had to. He had no choice. With a deep breath, Leo lifted the latch. The chest creaked open, the sound echoing in the stillness of the room. Inside, There were papers, old photographs, and a small, intricately carved box. Leo's hands trembled as he reached for the box, his heart racing. He felt Claire's gaze on him, her quiet presence urging him forward. He opened the box, revealing a small, silver key. It was simple, but it felt heavy in his hand, as though it carried the weight of everything he had lost and everything he still had to fight for. "What is this?" Leo whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Claire stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. "It's the key to what you've been looking for," she said softly. "The key to your past, to the promises you made, and to the future you still have to protect." Leo looked down at the key in his hand, a sense of understanding slowly dawning on him. This was no ordinary key. It was a symbol, a promise, and a way forward. He could feel the weight of his duty settling into his bones. This was just the beginning. They weren't just unlocking a chest, they were unlocking a future, one that had been buried for far too long. The air around them seemed to hum with the energy of the moment, and Leo knew that whatever came next, he was ready. With the key in his hand, he turned to Claire, and without. Darkness. Leo could feel it now, a presence that wasn't just in the room, but in the very walls themselves. Claire, standing beside him, seemed unfazed, her expression calm but alert. "Do you feel it?" Leo asked quietly, his voice barely a whisper. Claire nodded without looking at him, her eyes scanning the shadows. "Yes," she replied softly. "Whatever is here, it's been waiting." Leo's heart pounded in his chest as he moved toward the corner, his every step slow, deliberate. Hunter's growl deepened, a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Leo knew that whatever was lurking in the shadows, it was connected to everything they had uncovered so far. The key, the chest, the map, it had all led them here. To this moment, to this place. As Leo approached the darkness, he reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing the smooth surface of the key. It felt warm in his hand, almost alive, as if it were guiding him, urging him forward. The room seemed to grow colder with each step, the air growing heavier, thick with the weight of secrets. Leo stopped just short of the corner, his breath shallow, his senses heightened. He could feel the presence now, closer than ever, as if it were right beside him, waiting. "Hunter," Leo whispered, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. "Find it." The dog's amber eyes locked onto the shadows, and without hesitation, he bounded forward, his paws making no sound on the wooden floor. Leo watched as Hunter stopped in front of an old, forgotten door, tucked away in the farthest corner of the room. It had been hidden behind a thick layer of dust and cobwebs, unnoticed until now. Leo's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was what they had been searching for. He reached for the door handle, his fingers trembling as they made contact with the cold metal. The door groaned in protest as he turned the handle, but it opened easily enough, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into the darkness below. Leo could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, as if the very air in the house had been waiting for this moment, for this door to open. He glanced at Claire, who nodded once, her expression unreadable. Without another word, Leo stepped forward and Hunter followed close behind, his nose twitching as he descended the stairs. Claire was right behind them, her footsteps light but purposeful. The stairs creaked under their weight, the sound echoing through the silence of the house. As they reached the bottom, the air grew even colder, and Leo could see his breath misting in front of him. The space at the bottom of the stairs was small, cramped, and dimly lit by a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. But what caught Leo's attention was the table in the center of the room, covered in papers, old books, and strange artifacts. On the table, there was a large leather-bound book, its cover worn and faded with age. It was open to a page that seemed to shimmer in the low light, the words on the page glowing faintly, as if the book itself were alive. Leo's pulse quickened as he approached the table, his fingers itching to touch the book. He knew, deep in his gut, that whatever was written in that book would reveal the final piece of the puzzle. Whatever secrets the past had been hiding, they were about to be laid bare. Leo reached out, his hand hovering just above the page. He could feel the heat of the words as if they were calling to him, pulling him closer. The book, the key, the house, it was all connected. And as his fingers brushed the page, the room seemed to shift, the air thick with the promise of something monumental. The truth was within reach, and Leo wasn't about to turn back now. Leo's fingers hovered over the page, his heart pounding in his chest as the words seemed to come alive under his touch. For a moment, the world around him seemed to fade, the distant sound of wind and the creaking of the house falling away as he focused solely on the book in front of him. The faint glow of the letters illuminated the room, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and writhe across the walls. He could feel the weight of the truth pressing in on him, the weight of everything he had spent so long trying to outrun. The secrets were no longer buried, no longer locked away in the past. They were here, right in front of him. He opened the book fully, the pages brittle with age, the ink faded but still legible. As he began to read, the words spoke of promises made long ago, of a pact that had been sealed in blood and trust. It spoke of a family legacy, one that had been passed down through generations, a legacy that had been hidden to protect it from those who would misuse it. The book spoke of a responsibility, of a mission that had been entrusted to the Mitchell family, his family, and the role that he, and now Lily, were meant to play. The weight of it all crashed down on him, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. It wasn't just about protecting his daughter or surviving the past. It was about fulfilling something much bigger than himself. The promise made by his ancestors, a promise that had been waiting for him to return and take his place. As he absorbed the words, the room seemed to shift, the walls closing in just slightly, the air growing colder. Hunter growled softly beside him, a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Leo glanced down at the dog, his loyal companion, and saw the same knowing look in his eyes that he had seen countless times before. Hunter wasn't just guarding them anymore. He was guiding them, as if he too understood the weight of the past and the future that was now theirs to carry. Leo turned back to the book, his eyes scanning the next passage. The words spoke of a hidden location, a place where the final piece of the puzzle could be found, a place that held the key to unlocking the full truth, to completing the promise that had been left for him. It was a place that had been kept secret for generations, a place where the answers would finally come to light. Leo's breath caught in his throat as the realization hit him. This was it. This was the last step. Everything they had done, everything they had uncovered, had led them here. The final piece was within reach. But as he closed the book, something shifted in the room, a subtle change in the air, as though the house itself was responding to the truth that had been revealed. Leo stood, his heart racing, and turned to Claire, who had been standing quietly beside him. She didn't need to ask. What he had discovered, the look in his eyes, said it all. It was time to go. They weren't just walking out of this house. They were stepping into the unknown, into a future that had been waiting for them, one filled with danger, but also with the possibility of redemption. Claire nodded, her expression resolute. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. She understood. Together, they moved toward the door, with Hunter close behind, as if the dog knew they were about to embark on a journey that would change everything. Leo felt the key in his pocket, its weight now a familiar presence, a reminder of the promises they had made, the past they had uncovered, and the future they were about to step into. They were no longer just searching for answers. They were creating their own path, one that would lead them to the truth and beyond. As they stepped out into the cold, the door closing softly behind them, Leo took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone. They were in this together, and whatever came next, they would face it head on.